Yeah. Somebody asks here whether the family structure would be eliminated in this future world. I guess there's a good question about how much of what we're familiar with now would persist and shape what's happening when we're made obsolete in the sense that you discuss in the book, versus how much will we have to reimagine a lot of the basic social organization principles that we currently take for granted. I mean, an example that might be related to this is, well, what happens with, say, reproduction? Already there's interesting papers coming out on just the world of online dating and apps and so forth, which is radically reshaping pretty quickly how people find each other, find potential mates, and so forth. So do you feel like you also have to have your thumb on the pulse of discussions about future modes of reproduction there, where everybody comes out of a test tube in an artificial womb or something like that? Or are you happy to just leave those conversations to one side and create a proposal that's consistent with a range of possibilities for how families might be constituted?
Yeah, so again, my vision or case for utopia is all about keeping the horizons of possibility opening and not kind of foreclosing anything necessarily, or insisting on, well, we have to get rid of the family as traditionally conceived and we need to deconstruct marriage and marital relationships. Those are kind of possibilities that we should be out on the table, but I wouldn't be prescriptive about them. And I mean, I don't know about reproduction per se, but we have written jointly about issues around relationships and relationship formation. And I think you probably agree with this view anyway, since it was in a paper that we wrote together, which is that there is no one vision of the ideal relationship. And I wouldn't have any prescriptions on you have to have a monogamous pair bond with an opposite sex adult for life. That's one vision of a good or flourishing relationship, but it's not the only one. And it's about keeping the possibilities on the table, I think.
I think this does go back to the idea, as we talked about earlier, that technology isn't value neutral, and it's not just that everything stays the same and then you add some technology on top of it. So one thing that some people are raising about the advent and the spread of these dating apps and so forth is that they don't just create a new environment where we can take all of our diverse potential relationship values and stick it over here into sort of an online world, but rather that the very kinds of affordances that are raised by this technology might incline us toward a different set of values that might actually have structural implications for how all of us relate to one another, and that it's not just as simple as kind of, well, you do your thing and I do my thing. So, I mean, maybe this is just a summary point here, which is that there's going to be the challenge of figuring out how to identify the values that are behind the creation of these technologies in the future, and how to try to, I don't know if you mentioned some sort of constitutional world regime, but it seems like there's something like a need for democratic participation in how we create these technologies. And one criticism a lot of people raise is that the way it's going now is it just isn't like that. It's Elon Musk and all, these white guys who are really good at computer programming, and women have a hard time getting into Silicon Valley and so forth. So I think really paying attention to the political realities that it's very likely that whatever VR capacities exist in the future, unless something changes in our current political environment, is very likely to be shaped by the prejudices and the values of a relatively narrow slice of human beings. So it seems like what's needed then is, political philosophers and people who are concerned about the environment, and people who advocate on behalf of non-human animals, and feminists and technologists all coming together to the table to kind of be in conversation with the proposals you raise in this book, so that all of these kinds of questions are adequately contextualized.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, there's nothing I can say to that apart from, yeah, that sounds about right, and that's probably a good way of summing it up. But I mean, it's absolutely true that the kinds of affordances in technology can bias you in a particular direction. I mean, again, that's something we've written about jointly in relation to relationships. That let's say the kind of apps and services, they get you to fixate on certain features of people or certain attributes of people, as opposed to other things that might be valuable, or they get you to maybe adopt this more transactional mode of relating to other people, as opposed to a more kind of holistic or organic mode of relationships. I think the big problem, and this is something I discuss at greater length in that chapter on techno-pessimism, is that an awful lot of the technological infrastructure that we're now creating encourages a kind of like thoughtless, passive engagement with technology, that it's just this thing that is imposed upon us, and we are like very simple stimulus response machines in relation to it. Somebody tweets something, I click like, I give the appropriate response to it that seems to be conditioned into me by the designers or creators of it. And what we need to move towards is a more kind of thoughtful, autonomous, maybe also collective, plural engagement with technology, where it isn't just this single vision of the technological future. And that's very much, I would hope, a message that is consistent with the argument in the book, which is that, again, it's this horizontal vision of utopia and keeping the possibilities open, the boundaries of human existence open, not closed within a fixed kind of blueprint of what is the good life.